All right, Rod, we are back a couple of days after our last podcast, and we said if the Niners did something at the trade deadline, we would try and get back and record. And they went big game hunting, and they got one of the best players out there as far as who was available. And this is after Kyle Shanahan yesterday just said, no one's really available. We're not doing anything. And so he lied, but 49ers traded for Chase Young from the Commanders, number 2 pick in the 2020 draft, just 1 year after Nick Bosa was drafted by the 49ers. So he comes with that Ohio State Buckeyes pedigree. And I know he and Nick are pretty close. And what do you think about having him as the bookend?
Well, he is definitely an upgrade over what we had by a lot. He's had a really good season. Unfortunately for him, he missed basically a season and a half with that knee injury. But this year, he is he's playing at a really high level, and his numbers, dwarf anything that anybody else at defensive end has given us, and we basically got him for free. If you think about it, I mean, we gave up what is essentially a comp pick for him. If we don't re-sign him, we'll be eligible for another comp pick. So basically, it's a rent if he doesn't re-sign, which is something I guess we could talk about at some point. We basically get him for the rest of the season for essentially, whatever his salary is, which I understand is like $600,000 for for 9 game checks. So I mean, I don't see any downside to this move at all. I mean, and again, like I said, he's an immediate upgrade to Cleveland Farrell and so I think that's and Drake Jackson. It's a win-win-win.
That's how I look at it as well. Now, if you are a naysayer, you probably think that he is a bit of an underperformer. And the problem with that is he's just been hurt for the last 2 years. He had the ACL injury. He almost didn't. He barely got on the field last year. And so this is like I guess he would be around 2 years away from that original ACL. And he's having the best year of his career. His rookie season during the pandemic, he only played, I think the team only played 15 games. He had 7.5 sacks. And then this year, through 7 games, he's got 5. So he is on pace to have the best year of his career from a sack perspective, also from a quarterback hits perspective, tackles for loss perspective, if you kind of prorate the games. So this is his best season. Now, I guess if you're a naysayer, you could say, well, is he healthy or whatever? That's always a possibility with everybody on the football field, because football is such a violent sport. And I think the risk, which is very little, like you said, because of what they had to give up and what they will gain back if they lose him, the risk is so minimal. And it seems like a surefire win the trade thing to me. And Washington, I'm sure they're like, hey, if we could, we weren't going to sign this guy, so let's get a 3rd round pick for him as well. So it's almost like a situation where, depending on what Washington wants to do, you can almost sort of go, yeah, both teams kind of won this trade.
Well, and it's one of those deals where if they are about to go into a full-fledged rebuild, like I said, with a lot of these guys, you're going to have to beat a comp pick. Well, technically they didn't. They just gave them a comp pick, but that's a comp pick that watch the rest that the Commandos will get this year, as opposed to having to wait a year to get it, in 2025. So if they were moving off him, which it seems they were,
well, they didn't offer him
it.
the option, right? They didn't
Right,
extend him. Yeah.
get that. So at the time they didn't do that. Is like my question was, what do they know about his medicals?
Right.
That because when healthy, he was a dominant player. So that'll be a question that the Niners will have to ask at some point, is whether or not, he's worth keeping around. And that's going to be the question. I don't think, unfortunately for him, I don't think he's ever going to see that contract that Nick got this year. I just think with that kind of injury history. So if he's going to make that kind of big money, he's going to do it the way the old timers did. He's going to have to play at a high level for a long ass time, and be like Bruce Smith or one of the out there for 15 years. Unfortunately, I just don't think, because apparently his knee surgery, his knee injury was really, really severe. So that's unfortunate for him. But I think some team, if he can continue to play just at this level, he doesn't have to really level up. He's a really good player. He is a very good player. So somebody's going to get a really good player. We're going to get a really good player for the next, hopefully, 12 or 13 games. And then who knows? But the 49ers are in a position to get a good look at him, and then they'll be in a position to negotiate first. I mean, they theoretically, I guess they could franchise him if they wanted to do that, or just negotiate an extension with him. So they'll be in the pole position for that. But those are all decisions that don't have to be made now. I think if we're just looking at the 2023-2024 season, barring injury, which again, like you said, you could say that for everybody.
Yeah.
I see no downside to this deal at all. I think it's for what we needed. I think it was a great move.
Now, Rod, I want to just Rick mentioned that he's got 40 QB pressures in his top 5 in the league. So, we've heard as well that Bosa's pressuring, they're just not closing. And so maybe this helps if you got both sides pressuring, and this will help them get to the quarterback more, because I think the big question is now, well, what does that mean for the secondary? And it would have been great to also add a secondary piece. And there was a rumor, I think Tim Kawakami said that he heard that they were close to another deal. And I don't know what actually happened there. I've seen some stuff that maybe the deal was close and they didn't get it in on time or something like that, but I haven't seen anything actually official. It would have been great to get help in both places, but does this Chase Young trade help out the secondary? Theoretically, it should. In your opinion, will it help?
I think so. I've long said our coverage is only as good or as bad as the pressure up front. And if we are able to manufacture pressure with 4 guys, I think we'll be fine. I still don't know, over the past 2 weeks, he's not on the injury report, but Hargrave has been very quiet the last 2 weeks. We just, after playing at a really high level for the first 5 weeks, he's been basically a 0 for the past 2 weeks. So I don't know. He's not on the injury report. So as far as we know, he's healthy. But I think this guy, he helps, because it puts you in a position where, again, that was what we were dealing with earlier this season, is if Nick is a double team and Hargrave is a double team, just by the function of his size, Armstead is hard to single block. It's just having another playmaker on the defensive line. Just it really helps his defense, and I think that it's going to be something that puts a lot of deodorant on the things that have been kind of funky around here.
So let's look at Lynch from this perspective. He has seemingly been able to get help and utilize the trade deadline more than I think we've really seen. And I don't know what the stats are as far as Lynch taking advantage of it versus, other regimes with the 49ers. It seems like he has been really good at getting guys necessary. I saw a list of now I can't find it for whatever reason, but you can go back to the Jimmy G trade where, picking him up at the deadline and such. So what does this say about Lynch? For 2 years in a row, he's gone out and got maybe the best player or one of the top players available at the deadline. Do you feel like is this a thing where for whatever reason Lynch understands the cap stuff and understands the salary cap stuff? I repeated myself. Understands how the draft picks work and all that stuff to where he can afford to do it? Or does he just know which teams to kind of hunt and peck from? And maybe some of these teams are not as smart as the 49ers.
I don't, it's interesting because the other trade that the Commandos made was Montez Sweat. And that deal looked more like I thought it would look, which when you look at their numbers, he has not been as productive this year as Young has been, but he brought a second round pick, and word is that the Bears are looking to go into business with him long term, which is what made sense to me. If you're going to spend a second round pick on any of these guys, they need to be somebody. You're not spending that kind of capital on a rental. So, like you said, going back to Lynch, this is what a rental trade should look like. In that it doesn't really cost them anything. They get a really good player for this season, and the draft picks wash. So I mean, it's a brilliant move. So I don't know how much of that is his brilliance. I don't know how much of it is just the luck of the draw, or I'm sure it's a combination of all of it. But this was a brilliant move, and like if you go back to last year, the CMC move is, obviously they gave up a lot more, but they probably got a lot more too. So it's hard to find fault with either one of those trades. And even like you said, you can go back to the Jimmy G trade. I don't think that it turns out that they overpaid for what they got. It was a good, they got a starting quarterback for 5 seasons for, a second round pick. I mean, you take that every day. If you probably wouldn't have got that with that pick. I don't know what that pick turned into.
Do you remember who they cut once they traded for Jimmy G?
No, I do not.
Raiders quarterback Brian Hoyer.
Oh, yeah. There's a reason why I don't remember that.
I kind of hold Hoyer a little bit accountable because when Shanahan came on board, Shanahan's reasoning, as far as I can remember, for going with Hoyer instead of Kaepernick was more about his system and how he did not want to change his system around a quarterback, and Hoyer could kind of fit the things that he wanted to do. And I was just like, I don't buy it. Sounds BS to me. It sounds like a horrendous thing. Maybe there were 49ers at that point, Parag and Jed were not fans of Kaepernick for whatever reason. You can your own.
I don't, you can revisit it if you want to, but I'm sure the fact that he was a hardball guy didn't help.
Yeah, and the fact that like I've said before, the second he signed that contract, they were upset at him for signing that contract for whatever reason. But I always hold Hoyer accountable for that, just because I didn't want to blame Shanahan. It was like, no, Brian Hoyer, he fit this mold and he sucked still. But anyways. So Shanahan also said that he looked at the film from the game on Sunday, and he noticed that the team was just slow and didn't have a ton of energy. And I was wondering if you thought it was the whole Monday night to Sunday afternoon thing, or are they just playing uninspired football right now?
I don't know. And again, this type of streak lends itself to a bunch of Monday morning quarterbacking. But what I heard somebody posit that makes sense to me is it might just be that this is one of the downsides of playing such a physical brand of football, is that at times in the season, those guys get worn down. I mean, and it's, it kind of makes sense. I mean, that, is what, that is the earmark of, this team in Kyle Shanahan football, is being physical on both sides of the ball. And while I didn't notice any perceptible slowness, and he'd have a better pulse on that than I would, but I did notice is a bunch of missed blocks and a bunch of missed tackles and a bunch of blown coverages. So I don't know. Maybe a rest will do them some good. That's why, again, that was what I saw on the field. I'm not smart enough to be able to tell you schematically whether or not anything was wrong, but I know that I don't give a damn if Bill Belichick is scheming it up. If you can't get off blocks and you can't make tackles and you can't cover anybody, the X's and O's don't matter at that point. So that is what I took away from watching the last game, and putting another really good football player, better than anybody else that we could trot out there last Sunday. Chase Young is immediately our second best defensive end, and somebody who can play a bunch of snaps, which can't do anything but make us better instantly.
So the injuries coming out of that game, Dre Greenlaw looks like he also has a shoulder thing in addition to the earlier leg injury that he had during the season. So he's and talk about a violent style of football player. He's gonna be injured because he's, I don't think they describe their defense like this anymore, but they used to describe it as all gas and no brakes, right? And that's the way that he plays. So much to the point of where sometimes, when he does have to hit on the brakes, they're not great brakes. He just throwing people all over the place after the whistle.
And Harbaugh used to say physical with an F.
I love that one. Also, there's been an injury on the offensive line. So our favorite offensive lineman,
yes,
kinfolk. Actually, I don't know if it's kinfolk. I haven't found out one way or another, but I don't know too many people named Feliciano. John Feliciano. It's a Feliz Navidad
for
John Feliciano. So they're going to throw him in because Banks is now hurt. Sounds like he's going to be out a couple weeks. That is not. I mean, I don't know if it's
a disaster.
Good. I mean, I can't say if it's good or bad on the front of is he that less of a player, but Trent out, still not back yet. You're losing a little bit more consistency in some of these other guys. And I liked, was it Burford? One of the guys who, we kind of talk about in not a positive way necessarily, was just like, we just got to be better. I don't have an excuse. I don't have an example, but he's just like, we just got to be better. So, they're feeling it, right? They're feeling it, but Trent coming back will solve a lot of problem. So I don't know what to even say about Feliciano here, other than they signed him to be a backup. Somebody got hurt. Now he's got to fill in.
I mean, and he's a vet, and he has played good football. Now the question, my question coming into the season was, I mean, how much does he have left in the tank? So I mean, but we'll see. We're gonna find out together if he can hold the fort. It's just it hasn't been good honestly for anybody outside of Trent. All of these dudes are performing well below replacement level production. That's something that we're just gonna have to figure out. And the sooner Trent can get back, the better. I don't. I guess I'm out of the loop. I don't know where is Matt Pryor? He has only played 2 games, and he was actually playing pretty well out of all these guys. But I will amend that. Jalen Moore has played very well in his short stint, so it's going to be interesting. Hopefully, we can just get it patched together. So we'll see.
So the other thing, and we'll end with this. We're talking about how the pass rush helps out the secondary. Also, the thing that's been really interesting, and when you think about Brock Purdy, they were playing from ahead for those 5 games, for most of those 5 games when they're on the winning streak. And when you play from ahead, you're going to run the ball, and you're able to use the play action.
Right.
And when you play from behind, you get wholly predictable. Brock sitting in shotgun, he's passing. He was only throwing to 3 guys last week. He was very successful in some cases outside of those mistakes, throwing to those 3 guys. But that is the other thing about his play in these last 3 games. If you want to, talk negatively about it, five interceptions in 3 games is not great. But I wanted to just get your thoughts on some of this, and some of this negative play is also him being put in positions where this is not his strong suit. He is, when you're up ahead and you can run the ball and you can play action, you can roll him out, you can do all these other things. And then when you're losing by 14 points and this dude just got to get in shotgun the whole way down, if he's not hitting his first guy and you have this lesser than offensive line, then you could see where the problems could be created from.
Absolutely. The last 2 games in particular just haven't been game script friendly for Brock. Like you said, you want to have him being able to completely utilize play action. You want him to be able, you do not want to be in a situation where he is drop, where the run is not an option for him, just based on time and score. It's, you can't, to be in a situation where you can't grind it out, where you got to get points. That's just not the that's not the way that they want to play with him, and I don't think that is where he is at his best. People have been putting, these memes up about, the interception numbers, and just like most stats, it's fool's gold when you talk about Brock only has 5 interceptions and Patrick Mahomes has 8. Well, Patrick Mahomes is also throwing the ball like 100 times more than he has, because what they're asking Brock to do isn't the same thing they're asking Mahomes to do. And if you were to put Brock in a situation where he was throwing the ball 40 times a game, I don't think that is that's not the place that Kyle wants to put him, and I don't think that's the place he needs to be. So hopefully we can figure it out and be able to get to establish the run. And hopefully get our defense back to a place where points wise, last week notwithstanding, that game was 17 points for a pretty long time. And I mean, if you can, generally speaking, if you hold teams to 17 points, you're supposed to win that game. So we'll see. I just think hopefully, like you said, we can keep him in more game script friendly situations where we're not putting the offense on his shoulders, because I don't think that that's fair for, a second year. But really, games wise, he's not even, he hasn't even completed a full season yet. So, I mean, I just don't think that's an optimal situation to put him in, is where he is, the offense is on his shoulders and he has to go out there and win us games. I don't think anybody wants that.
Yeah, and also, not that Shanahan is not thinking about all kinds of situations, but when you are winning your games and you're 5-0, I'm sure he's not staying up late at night thinking about, okay, 3rd and 12, we're down by 14. What's in my bag? Like, he's like, now you're thinking that because you're not able to sustain defensively to stop 3rd down. But I just think that there were so many moments, and I mentioned this after the game. CMC, if you're not running that outside zone run that they love to run for big yardage, if you don't believe you have the time to come back with those runs, there were multiple opportunities, I thought, with the defense closing in on Brock like they were, where you use this guy as a little bit of an outlet, or you sucker the defense into throwing this dude a screen. You just want to put the ball in his hands because the second he touches it, there's an opportunity for him to break it, and you needed big plays at that time. I just thought that they did not utilize him the way that they could have in trying to come back. But at the same time, you're down 2 touchdowns. But I would rather throw something to CMC and use him, like the Niners may have used Roger Craig in the past, than try and figure out a way to get Juwan Jennings open downfield. Juwan Jennings had 0 targets in that game.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Totally. Actually, Rick does have a question, and we'll end with this. Hufanga, his drop off this season compared to last year, it sure seems like he has regressed quite a bit. And I'll let you go first, and I'll add anything. We talked a little bit about this on Sunday, but it's been something that I've thinking about for sure.
Yeah, it seems that his role might be a little different. I remember when he came into the league, our questions about him was, could he hold up in coverage? And in his first, 2 seasons, he did, he was really good in that role. But this year, I don't have any answers, but it's clear that there has been a drop off, and I don't know enough about it to know if his responsibilities have changed or not. But he definitely is not performing to his previous 2 seasons level.
Yeah, I think it is wholly reliant on them being unable to get the pressure that they want. So because what he is good at is he's a playmaker. He's good at coming up and making hits and tackling. But if they're having to cover for an extra 0.3 of a second or whatever it is, I'm sure it's a minuscule thing, but everything is timing. And so if they're expecting the quarterback to have to throw at this time, and he is dependent on that to make his play, I could see that 0.3 to 0.5 extra seconds that he's got to run around and cover to be a bit of a problem. And on the flip side, them being able to get to the quarterback last year probably enabled him to not have to cover for as long and not have to cover as much of the field and be able to step up in situations. But also, and here's another thing, and this will be it and we'll end it here. You got a different defensive coordinator who is using different blitz packages, and so whatever he was comfortable with last year is kind of new this year as well. So that he could be in spots that he may not be as comfortable in as he was last year.
Could be.
All right. Thanks for doing this, Rod. A little bit of an emergency show. We will be back not this weekend because the Niners have a bye. I don't imagine there will be any news for us to come back during the week, but it's possible. If so, if we can make it work. But Niners have a bye. I kind of almost don't want them to have a bye because I want to just watch Chase Young now, but it's probably for the better, so he can get a little bit more acclimated to their style. Probably.
So the next game is going to be an early game, huh? We're in Jacksonville, right?
Yes. Did the Commanders have their bye yet? Do you know?
I don't know.
I'm just wondering if he'd already had a bye with the Commanders. I'm looking real quick. I'm just going to look at and see. Does not look like he's had a bye yet. So this will be his first bye as well. I was just wondering. I was like, man, what if he gets 2 byes? That would actually be pretty cool. Get some extra rest. All right. That is it from here. We will see you not this weekend, but next weekend after the Niners play the Jaguars. For Rod, I'm Double G. See you when we see you. Peace out.